So today's episode is really special. Welcome to the Gtar Phil Show, the GPS for creatives, and I've got an amazing guest today. She's kind of the archetype for this show. I feel her story is going to be so inspiring, and I think everyone's going to get a whole lot out of it. And is she uh, creative in the sense that we are used to? She's not an entertainer or producer or a musician or singer, actress. She's not those things, but she encapsulates our story probably better than anybody I can name. She is an author. She is a wife. She is a mother. She is a successful entrepreneur. She's a world-renowned speaker. She's a friend to many, many of our icons of our culture. And I won't even name drop for none of those. And she is the first Black woman to make full professorship at Princeton Theological Seminary. I want to introduce to you guys Miss Keri, Dr. Keri Day Moore. All right. Uh-oh.
Thank you, Phil. Oh, it is wonderful to be with you. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I've been looking forward to this conversation since January. So we
Mm,
got this here and let's go. Let's
yes,
really go. This is gonna be great. So,
yes.
Keri, how have you been?
Okay, first, it's been good. This has been a very busy yet rewarding a year for me.
Same.
If I can just mention, it was just really great at the beginning of January to see, you and your lovely wife,
Yeah, yeah,
in show on a cruise, me and my husband,
yeah.
um, to sort of draw inspiration from that. So I want to say that, part of my year was shaped by fellowship, a
Same.
family. I like to call you
Same.
all family. The
Exact
fellow,
same. Exact same.
fellowship of family.
Yeah.
And especially like given all that's going on in the world right now,
Sure.
honestly. I mean, we're talking about an upcoming election, but we still have the baggage of, the Trump era, the Trump
Yeah,
shenanigans,
yeah.
of our political climate, right? In which we had the Hurricane war going on, and now the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. I mean, there's a lot going on politically and like even culturally, that I can, honestly say that, in the midst of all of that, I've been able to sort of find my foot, which we'll be talking about,
Yeah.
my voice and my, my own creative style and expression and so forth. So it's been good. It's been a good year thus far.
You know what? I just thought about something. I have to take something back. I said that you're not a creative in the sense that we know, but you actually are because you are a well-renowned author. So, yes,
Yeah.
your authorship puts you squarely in the space of being a creative. I think that's how it even started for us having that conversation. So I got to take that back. You are, yes, but I ditto everything that you said. I think that my year was even shaped by the birth canal of us hanging out the way that we
Mm,
did, or that first few weeks of the year.
mm,
We hung out for what, 6, 7 days, and it was like I want to
that's right.
start the year like that every year. It's just been great.
Yes.
So yeah, yeah, you and Austin and me and Jeannie, that was we just had a blast. We look back on that like that's the one we played on repeat right there. We had
It, it,
so much
it's
fun.
It's true. And if I can just say this, Phil, I mean, oftentimes, and of course, we're going to get into all this, but oftentimes we think of what it means to be creative or creative as like about doing that we're doing something. And certainly
Hmm.
that's a part of it, right? But I think, oftentimes we may bracket or we may underestimate that part of the creative process is literally about being, about who you are, showing up, being open to the world, right? Listening to the world's gestures and to where I like to say the spirit points, the direction the spirit is pointing us in. And part of that is like it's relationships, right?
Hmm.
That we come together, we fellowship, and it's through the way we inhabit our relationships that actually awakens us up. It does
Yeah,
to
yeah.
to our own creative energies, our own, inner desires and the questions that we have going. And so for me, I mean, again, the reason why at the beginning of the year, seeing you and Jeannie, that was so important. The fellowship was so important, is because it began awakening that whole musical,
Yeah.
I would say, engagement began awakening my mind and my heart and my spirit,
Yeah.
to the work that I needed to do moving into this year.
Same, 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 same. I think this year has been unique for me, and I've been focused more on what I do, and what I do with anyone else. It has to infuse with what's happening with my brand,
Mhm,
and which is
mhm.
really, really different. And I think a lot of that happened because of how we started. It just like, okay, we got out of the bed with the right feet, and put the right slippers on, and it set us onto the day. Pretty nice. I know you don't have a ton of time, so um, let's start from the beginning. And some people, you just say, okay, you lost, but your beginning is important to where you are now, because yeah, it's all really part of the story. So where did you grow up? Where, all of that. Give me that.
Absolutely. So, I was born and raised in Springfield, Illinois,
Ah,
in the Midwest. And let me just say this, a lot of people think that Chicago is the capital of Illinois. I think not.
wow, wow.
Chicago is not. It is Springfield, Illinois. You
That's
sort of
literally
think
true.
right? You think Springfield, I like to tell people, you think Springfield, think of Abraham Lincoln, right? The land
Ah,
of
yeah.
Lincoln, the land
Okay,
of
there
Abe
you go.
Lincoln. Right? I mean, it's extremely central to the history of this nation. So I grew up in Springfield, Illinois, and part of my story, to sort of my own, I would like to say, unfolding and becoming,
Mm-hmm.
right? As an author, as a writer in particular, because as I'll talk about, I certainly am a professor, and that's sort of the academic and intellectual is the way that I'm known, in my field. But the truth of the matter is, growing up in Springfield, the first creative act I can remember myself doing, it was at the age of 5. I remember because I was in kindergarten. When I attempted, because we would read. My father was a huge reader. I went to a great academy, a great school, and so even at 5, I was being introduced to different kinds of genres, from regular prose of
Mm-hmm.
the three word sentence, right,
Mm-hmm.
to poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And at 5, even though I couldn't write well, I attempted to write my first poem, right?
Ah,
So this is like the first creative act, alongside another act, which was, again, I didn't know all the ins and outs at 5 of writing, but I had a father that, and real mother too, that nurtured that instinct. And I remember, we cut paper, regular paper. I sort of scribbled on that paper. We got color construction paper to make a front cover and a back cover, and we stapled the papers and the front cover and back cover together
yeah.
to make a book. And we had a
Yes.
book signing, right? So like,
Come
even,
on.
and this is right, and this is the point, like children, a lot, even children, oftentimes, if you're really paying attention, if you're leaning in to the
They're gonna
children
tell
that
you.
they tell you something
They're gonna
about who
tell
they
you.
are, right?
Yeah.
There you go, about who they're becoming, who their
Hundred
destiny,
percent. 100%. They
you
will
know?
tell you. They will if
That's
you
right.
watch that.
Yep.
Stop. Parents,
That,
let me tell you,
right?
it's gonna save you a lot of heartbreak. It's gonna save you a lot of arguments. It's gonna save you,
Yep.
stresses and strains in your relationship with your kids. Stop telling
Yep.
your kids what you want them to be. Just,
That's it.
I got
That's
to.
it.
Okay.
That's it.
It's not your
That, that-
job to do that. Your
that's right.
your job is to watch them, see what they are, because they already come to earth with an assignment.
Come on.
Trust me, they do. They come to earth with an assignment. Your job is to help them unlock that assignment. I don't
That's
know everything about parenting. I don't plan to write any books on it, but I tell you this, it's going to save you a whole lot of time. It's going to save you a lot of heartache.
Yep.
Yo,
That's it.
listen,
Exactly.
listen. Little Jimmy is not a doctor. He's not going to be a doctor. He is not a doctor. He was doing pro wrestling moves on the Golden Doodle at 3.
Ah,
He's telling you something. He's telling
that's
you
it.
something right there. He
Telling.
broke his femur jumping out of the bunkhouse because he had to get that, that front flip
Yes,
He's
do
telling
it.
you something then. Don't worry about how it's
Right.
gonna work out. That's not your job. Don't. It ain't your job to. That don't make no sense. Well, dude, you doing what you did at one time didn't make any sense. Trust
That's
me,
right.
they're going to be equipped for the thing that they got in them. And
That's it.
and
That's
I
it.
mean, my kids are still young, but I've watched from what I saw at 2.
Yeah,
They're literally doing. It's just like, oh, okay.
exactly.
It's like it don't
That's
really
it.
change. And my parents did it in me. That's how I know. That
That's
say
it.
very similar story. Very
Yep.
similar story.
And so you have to like just trust this process. And I had parents that knew how to trust that process.
Straight
And
up.
that was also really important because I grew up in a very musical home.
Ah,
My father was a musician, not a
okay.
professional musician
Okay.
in the sense that you or my husband
Uh-huh.
are, but certainly played for the church. He played multiple instruments from the
Mm.
time he was in school in the band.
Mm-hmm.
So trumpet, of course, moved to piano, then to organ. Was minister of music,
Oh yeah.
in our church and did stuff beyond that in the jurisdiction. So I grew up sort of in a musical family. My grandmother was a singer. This is the day side, of course, my father's side.
Mm.
And so one of the things early on that I developed, Phil, an appreciation for is sort of this idea that, whether it was music, whether it was art, particularly music, because that was sort of the language of our household.
Sure, sure.
Um, that in many ways, being attentive to your own and honoring, I should say, your own creative energies
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
really truly important to who you
Absolutely.
are, right? And
Absolutely.
so, and this will be, of course, really important because by the time I was 7 or 8, I was actually writing poetry, right? So
Mm.
I say all that to say, in Springfield, Illinois, it's I'm thinking here, I can't help it because, I'm in theological education, theological studies,
All day.
where, in the gospel, when they find out where Jesus is from, Nathaniel in particular says, can any good thing come from Nazareth?
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
And look, Springfield's really small in that kind of way where like, most people, they either work, for the state, for the bank. It's 100,000 people. It's not a big African-American community. I knew of one African American professor at the community college
Mm.
in Springfield, Illinois, but I really didn't know anyone,
Mm-hmm.
that did exactly, what I do today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And which is in a way I celebrate that because I am an expression of that community. So that's
Absolutely.
in no way to slight that
Yeah.
community, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You wouldn't
Um,
be it if it wasn't for them.
there you go. I wouldn't be here. And so for me, Springfield, in a lot of ways, although, quote unquote, insignificant, compared to big cities, let's say, really it formed the ground, the sort of the grounding of the way I would look at life, in terms of no matter what I would do, and we'll talk about my journey here in a second, I'm sure. No matter what I would do, I would bring that need to think creatively
Mm-hmm.
about my vocation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially to think about my vocation and its expression through writing in
Mm-hmm.
particular, right? And for me, as I'm sure we'll talk about, writing for me in the academy as a professor, it's done a particular kind of way, like so it's towards the philosophical argument, for
Mm-hmm.
example. People like to say if you did come in with the creative bone, the academy at the PhD level in the social sciences or in parts of the humanities like philosophy, religion, they have a way of beating out
Yeah.
that
Sure.
creative edge, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So the great thing is, through the way I grew up in Springfield, it sort of kept me married to, it kept me invested,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And whatever I would do to express that, through the arts, through writing, through ideas of music, which
Sure.
we'll talk about, things I've written that deal with aesthetic work,
Mm-hmm.
aesthetics, which is writing about music and
Mm.
its effect. And I don't want to get into that right now. I'm sure we will. And its effect
Yeah.
on religious communities and the broader public. So I mean, Springfield was my beginning, and it is still with me to this
Mm-hmm.
day.
I told y'all. I told you this episode is crazy. It's so good. Like what she gets. It's so amazing what she can pull out of everything. I mean, like just she pull out so much out of process. We could do this forever. Um, Yeah. I mean, it's like you're already well in the story. Like I'm just like,
Yep, yep. Yeah, so like
keep
how did I
on.
get to where I was, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
So, well, no, yeah, yeah, no.
Yeah.
But okay. So for you, there's obviously there's you know you went to school and elementary school. You told us about that. Then high school and college. Was there? It sounds like you knew from an early age authorship was going to be huge for you. That's kind of, you felt like something you were called to from an early age,
That's
and
right. That's right.
it it is that knowledge and that calling, is that something that has kind of shaped your narrative your whole
Mm.
life, or was it something that you had to kind of set to the side to get to the next place, or was it a
I see.
guiding light for you? How, usually when someone knows that early, that's the locomotive that pulls all the other the other cars. So, you know how was that for you?
Oh, this is such a great question, Phil, especially in the way that you asked it. Asked it, the image of the locomotive in the sense of
Hmm.
the way it pulls everything else, like on a train, for
Yeah,
example,
yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
That's just like, I'm sorry, that's just such a beautiful image.
Thanks. Thanks.
Because I feel that's exactly what
Okay.
writing was for me.
Hmm.
And because and so to be more explicit here, for me, writing has fundamentally been about a form of self-expression and a way to evolve. And
Mm.
I want to amplify this, right? As a writer, because in sort of our very market driven culture, and don't get me wrong, there are aspects of the market that work, okay? So
Yeah.
I want to be very clear, but in our market driven culture, oftentimes, whether we're talking about writing, whether we're talking about, you say, the work that you do in music,
Hmm.
whatever we're talking about relative to the creative arts, there is always the temptation to so radically commodify
Yeah.
what we do that it's seen as a product,
Yeah.
right? It's just seen as a product, and the thing about when it's so radically commodified, and what we're doing is seen instrumentally towards like just making money
Yeah.
or just seen as a product, is we become alienated from what we produce, right? We
Mm.
don't see what we do, what that is, whatever that is. For me, it's writing.
Yeah.
We don't see the book, for
Yeah.
example, as something that enables me to evolve and morally grow as a human being, right? That there's something about the world that I'm coming to understand. And out of that understanding, I'm sharing it with other people, with the broader community, in hopes that, other people will experience enlightenment and they will also flourish.
Yeah.
That But it's sort of like when, because of the commodified culture that we live in, where everything is, it's like it's about the dollar, the bottom line,
Yeah. It's
and this,
capitalism. Yeah.
that capitalism. It's so easy to say, to my, for example, as I'm writing, I've got to get this book out. My editor is telling me I got to push this book out in 6 months, right?
Hmm.
Although I know, and although I'm sure you know as well, that part of the creative part of, like, for me, example, writing a book, a large part of the power of writing a book is the actual creative process,
Yeah.
not just the end, which is the
Yes.
book,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's what I come to understand about myself and about the world in the process of writing the book, right?
Hmm.
That's what I mean by moral growth and evolving as a human being. That sometimes the market demands tend to cut off
Yeah.
from us,
Yeah.
and it alienates us
Yeah.
from what we produce. And
Yeah.
so, so for me, writing has been that kind of self-expression, and that's followed me from the time I was in college, right? I wanted to
Hmm.
be a lawyer.
Okay.
I was like, okay, go and be a lawyer, right? I'm gonna do X, Y, and be an economist. Really, it was
Wow. Okay.
trained in economics, specifically. I had a double major.
Oh, so you
And
you know
so
what you're talking about when you're talking about the radical
I know, yeah, I
commodification.
do actually. I know a lot of economic theory, really, but
that's that's best.
right. But it was sort of in college, despite all that I was doing sort of in economics and in political science, which is more like mathematical, statistical, it's
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. I was always on the side writing. And not only that, it's interesting because even though at Tennessee State University in Nashville, which is where I did my undergrad, and even at Yale when I did my master's, at TSU, even though I was in the social sciences and doing economics, I was more so known at that time for being on the stage. I was involved in theater. So
Wow.
I was I was in the college guild, theatrical guild,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually rest his soul, Barry Scott, who was very, very well-known actor and theatrical producer in Nashville, Tennessee. He owned one of the few Black theater companies in
Mm-hmm.
the nation.
Mm-hmm.
His was Negro Playwright. I did some stuff through Negro Playwright. I mean, Raisin
Wow.
in the Sun was my first, I played Beneatha. That was my first
Nice.
full run for
Wow.
several weeks. So for me, eventually the decision that I would make, which would be, I want to go into theology and philosophy. I want to write about some of the most important existential and religious questions that I have about
Yes.
myself, about the divine, and about the world. But I want to do it in a way that doesn't divorce itself from like questions of culture, economics, politics.
Yeah.
So I'm still keeping some of that, but all of that's being driven by this very basic need for me, even wanting to go into the professorate to write. This is what I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm.
All of that's being driven by this idea that at the end of the day, the way that I evolve, the way that I grow, the way that I express myself is through the written word, the
Yeah.
art, I like
Yeah.
to say, of the written word.
Yeah. That is amazing. I mean, it every 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 response is a journey. It's a narrative of its own. It's almost like, okay, we got little Keri. Now we got Keri finding her way in college. It's like we're going through, you know, acts of a play, sort of the way that you're telling it is pretty cool. One thing that I realize what seems to be shaping this narrative, and I think we're going to see this again and again. If I could encapsulate what you said, it's the algorithm versus the journaling. And I think
Yes.
what I've always said is that true artists are journalists, regardless of if you're a filmmaker, if you're a singer songwriter, if you're the reason we love Kendrick Lamar so much, and the reason Kendrick just ethered Drake is because Kendrick's a journalist and
It.
Drake's a capitalist.
Oh, that's it.
Drake is about the algorithm. Drake is literally a spit out version of the algorithm. What will
That's it.
be what will be the least offensive, what will be the most universal, what will be the most corporatized, yet feel like he's got street sensibility. He's from North America, but he's not from America. He ain't from the streets, but he can relate to both. He's the perfect lab bunny of all
Mm.
those things. And I mean, come on, we know this. I'm not saying anything we didn't know.
Right, right.
Um, it's just it worked for him, and he had some bangers. Okay, I mean, Hotline Bling, just come on. That just if I know that's an old song now, but little 5-year-olds were singing that song, like for real. Okay,
Yeah.
he crossed all the way over with that. But once you do that, to stay in that world and forget and to point the gun at the hot street journalist was not
Mm,
the move, because
mm-mm.
Kendrick has always been our journalist.
That's it.
He's been ever since Biggie and Pac left. He were like, oh, he's the next one. We've
Yes.
had a lot of great people, I mean, Black Star. We've had tons of great, Tribe. But in terms of a singular poet, Kendrick emerged for us as that, and he has the heart of the people. And
Yes.
when
Yes.
he said, "Oh, hold on, I got a bone to pick with Drake," there was no way for Drake to win that. There just what he
I
did not know. So it's like, I've been saying this, that we're seeing this. We're starting to see this a lot. It's happening in Hollywood with certain people. You're
Mhm.
seeing it in entertainment. That's why Cat Williams has done so well recently. because he's a journalist. He's
That's a good point.
he's like, I'm a truth teller. He's going
Yep.
I'm just
Good
here to
point.
tell the
Yep.
truth. So you have
Yep.
people who are journaling the time. That's a great artist. They're journaling the time. That's why if you make a good record, you can't say, oh, this record is dated. Well, of course it's dated.
My goodness.
Any journalist, it's dated. Yeah. Hey, 5/17, 2024, I did this.
Yes.
I was here. Yes, it's dated. That's the point of it. Now, if
Yes.
it has universal appeal and timelessness outside of that date, that may or may not have anything to do with me. That may have something or nothing to do with my consciousness of it.
Mm.
I was a pipeline for something greater than myself, but the point was to date a moment. So that's why, like, if you make art, you're like, don't throw away your art. Don't throw away, hey, oh, that's whack. That's not. No, no, no. If that was that a true representation of your feelings, your thoughts,
It,
your ideas of
it.
that place in your life, then that's what it is. It may not be for everybody, but you need to have it.
That, and if I could just, I mean, what you're saying is, oh my, it's so good. I'm sorry, it was so good. As my grandmother would say, it just gets gooder and gooder. It's so good. It's so good. About this journaling the times, and is it an expression of the truth, right? Of who you are, of the world. That's what you do. And for me, being in the professorate, a lot of times in the academy, the goal is to present maybe the most coherent argument, right? Or to take up a school of thought that is seen as the superior philosophically or theologically school of thought, not necessarily to speak truthfully about the times. I love this phrase used, journaling. They were journalists of the times.
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, talking about, uh, in my own particular journey as a writer, those moments where I had to choose authenticity and being a journalist of the times, right, has been critically important to my own unfolding career and vocation. I'll give an example.
Talk about it. That's what we're here
Yeah. I'll give it an example. The naysayers within the academy, but in me sort of living in and embodying my own truth, what was produced on the other side. So, this is back, let's see, it's 2024. This was around 2015. I had written 2 academic books. I was already being seen as a kind of emerging, national academic, developing reputation. I was teaching at Texas Christian University at Bright Divinity School at the time. And I had a colleague that was getting a collaborative writers colony together, writers group together, along with the publisher. And the colleague asked me, what we're trying to do is we're trying to gather and think collaboratively about the writing process, creatively about the writing process. But what I envision, if you're interested in these, 10 to 12 scholars doing, is writing these books for the general public. So it's not an academic book, but writing, interpreting the times with respect to theological education against the backdrop of this, political, cultural, and economic moment. And as a Black woman, this is important. You're the only Black woman that I'm coming to. And so, to make a long story short, this became a small book that I wrote called Notes of a Native Daughter, testifying in theological education. And I actually took that title, Notes of a Native Daughter, from James Baldwin, of course, one of the preeminent, artists, writers of all time, not just our time, but all times. He has a book called Notes of a Native Daughter. I mean, Notes of a Native Son, rather. I'm sorry, Notes of a Native Son, in which he's reflecting on what it means to be Black in America, right? That as a native, like we're born here, we're native, right? We're born here, but we're treated, so we're an insider, but we're treated simultaneously as an outsider, right? And in that sense, that insider, right, there you go. It's that insider-outsider dynamic. So I wrote this book, Notes of a Native Daughter, in which I'm reflecting not only on my childhood tradition of Pentecostalism, I'm reflecting on the profound place of music through Mattie Moss Clark. I'm reflecting on Zora Neale Hurston's work,
Ugh.
and the metaphor of hanging new ornaments, that metaphor onto your tradition. But the entire book then is written in a kind of biographical, at times novel-like
Mm.
style. It's very small, 1-2 sittings you can read it.
Yes.
That is really speaking the truth about the growing racial disparities in higher
Mm.
education, including theological education. Um, the problems, what I refer to as learning to pass, in which people that are Black and other minoritized people like us, we come into higher education, and in order to make it, there is this understanding that we have to leave our own indigenous vocabularies and ways of
Sure,
understanding
sure,
behind.
sure.
So, I talk about in the book that, for my community, music was critical to mediating divine presence, right? We know this,
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
if we want to know something, if you want to know something about the God, about the Lord in the Pentecostal tradition,
Yeah,
go to the music.
yeah, yeah,
The
absolutely.
music will
That's the
got will,
theology
will
right there.
that's just really the reality.
Yeah.
And so and how that allows us to access knowledge in a different way. So I had a lot of people pushing back, don't do that to your career. You're still climbing. You're still
Mm.
climbing. This will be seen as less rigorous, less intellectual, more creative, right? And for a while I sort of entered, but I said, no, this is a really critical, important moment in our history of theological education of our nation. And I wrote the book. To make a long story short, although all my books have done well, this one book, Notes of a Native Daughter, has not only been the most well read around the nation of all of my books, but internationally.
Wow.
Okay. And
Wow.
so, and for me, I learned so much about the creative process, being with 10 other people, where we're vibing, we're riding in different places around the nation, from California to Las Vegas to Boston, where we're riding in different locales and discussing our work, and understanding a bit more about what it means to write in a way that is prophetic and that is authentic and honest.
Yes.
And so for me, I guess the point that I'm saying, that I'm wanting to press here, is that even within someone like me that eventually would go, to Princeton and be the first in their 212-year history in the seminary
Hmm.
to become full professor and then get a chair, that even within that context, I still needed to creatively grow, to use the pen and the paper to creatively communicate something about the world that I now know is helping thousands of people around the world.
It, it's crazy that um it's really amazing that I think as a creative, and I take my cues from, I've always kind of looked at, this is the who I came to the dance with.
Mhm.
You know, I came to the dance with. I came to the stage because I was considered an ultra creative.
Mhm.
Whatever intellectual things were there, it was expressed through creativity. If that was
Mhm.
cut off, you weren't getting nothing out of me. Nothing
Mm.
I wanted to even give. Even if I had the ability. You know, the STEM stuff, that works for me through creativity. So it's amazing that you would be in a world that would want to cut you off and say, hey, we're all left brain here. Use one half of your brain. Um, it would be just as crazy to say we're right brain here. Use nothing but the right side of your brain,
Yes,
because then you can't come to solutions.
that's it. That's it.
I saw this quote from this guy years ago, and he said, "Creativity is the discovery of options.
Mm.
Focus
Mm.
is the elimination of them."
That's good.
So
Wow.
you need creativity to discover. You need
Yeah.
focus to finish. So
That's
you need left and right.
needed.
You need them both, and to teach or to suggest or to platform this idea that one is greater than the other. I mean, all throughout nature, there's dichotomy, there's parity, there's, bilateralism, there's, there's all throughout you see it. You see it. You there's yin and yang. There's left and right. There's up and down. There's more than that. But I'm saying you see so much. It creates balance. It's a we need one and the other.
This is it.
And it's crazy that someone would even suggest that, and they think that, you know, what kind of vacuum are you living in? And that, I believe that's why what you did has done so well, because it can speak to the heart as well as the mind as well as the intellect.
Yeah.
I don't want just, you know, and if there are times where I only need one fed, most
Mhm.
likely it's going to be the more fun one, which is just the heart. You know, hence the mindlessness that we get. It does
Yeah.
pretty well because hey, yeah, if I gotta pick something to eat all day, like, I'll take the junk food. That's what kids say for
Right.
the most part. You
Right.
know, there's a
Yep.
reason for it. It tastes good at least. You know,
Right. Right.
um, man. So, but share with them how did you? I want to know. I guess I should just really ask how how did you, black girl, grew up in Springfield, Missouri, grew up Kojic, you know, how'd you end up at Princeton? That is, I
Yes.
mean, I don't, man, like you, that's pretty far. For a lot of people don't know, black Pentecostal church, regardless of denomination, they're
Yeah.
on the actually more conservative end
That's right. That's,
of the spectrum, uh, politically and thought
that's
and
right.
dynamic. It's kind of, it's the liberalism is in the theology. You know,
Hmm.
I mean, well, I shouldn't even say theology. The liberalism is in allowing God to operate in services and, you know,
Yeah.
ministering the five gifts, you know, the fun stuff, the crazy wacky stuff
Fun stuff.
that we do in church. They all about that, but they're conservative in a lot of opinion. So I mean, shoot, I mean, going to school was, you know, 75 years ago. That was like the devil. You know, going to
Yeah.
Hollywood was is still the
Right.
devil. You know, making it mainstream is still the devil. Consider, you know, unless that tithe is good, amen. But you know, that kind of stuff is how did you end up like
Yeah.
the top of the heap when it comes there? Share with us that.
Yeah, this is oh my God, it's a great question. I have to say that, my ability to sort of be a part of this particular academic community, it really began when I went to TSU, interestingly, really quick. In Springfield, Illinois, it's Republican land. Chicago is heavily Democratic,
Yeah.
of course. Dick Durbin, is one of the US senators there. And of course in Springfield too, but Springfield is extremely conservative and even more white Republican, white evangelical
Oh, okay.
Republican.
Okay.
Okay. So I sort of grew up going to an academy. I sort of grew up in that habitus, so to speak.
Hmm.
I grew up in that context where, I was being formed, and so not just sort of religiously, but even politically and
Yeah.
culturally, in very ultra conservative ways. And so when I arrived at TSU, to HBCU, I was able, I feel, to like just encounter different, even though it's mostly Black folks, but encounter different kinds of people that had different views and
Yeah.
ideas about the world. That's just really
Sure.
and I think that a lot of times, when you grow up in a particular community, whether the community is liberal or conservative, but if you grow up in a community that's for the most part homogenous,
Yeah.
right? One kind of thing. Oftentimes it's not even that, as individuals, we reject any other views. It's just that all we know is all we know.
Yeah. We don't. That's what we had access to.
That's what we know. So
Yeah.
this is what we're faithful to, so to speak.
Hmm.
And so when I went there, I would say first culturally and politically, I began to expand my wings, and I began opening up cultural, politically, and even becoming a feminist, a Black feminist. I began doing that through the arts, through theater.
Hmm.
It was me playing the role of Beneatha and learning about
Hmm.
the rich Black cultural history and the diasporic, understand, and the problem of patriarchy, right? And
Yeah.
I'm learning this through the character that I'm
Yeah.
working on,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
Through Lorraine Hansberry, right? Who
Yeah.
is a woman of her own times, a contemporary of Baldwin and Nina Simone and others, right?
Absolutely.
Where Lorraine Hansberry is making these sorts of interventions in terms of racial and gender justice. So all of that is leading me sort of in some ways through the arts that I am slowly evolving. And it wouldn't be until I arrived at Yale University Divinity School working on, my Master of Theological Studies, that I felt the world would really open up for me theologically. And it wasn't so much that when I went to Yale and people would say, oh, you become more progressive or liberal, that I was leaving behind all that I understood from my past. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
from the communities that I come from, because so much of what I was taught is rock solid, about,
Sure.
for example, God's love, for creation.
Yeah.
The importance of fellowship that we talk about the Eucharist or communion.
Mm-hmm.
Communion is not just experience when we take the small cup and the wafer. Communion, or the Eucharist in more higher terminology theologically, is also experience when we are in the basement breaking bread and laughing to the top of our lungs,
Right.
right
Right.
after
Right.
service or after the
Yes.
midnight musical or whatever
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That this is part of sort of the well, the reservoir of spirituality
Mm-hmm.
that I thought was extremely important. But when I went to Yale, what I realized is that, for example, the way that I understood, the Bible, there's so many different ways, right? That communities around the world who are Christian, by the way, Christian communities around the world, the way that they understand the written text, their own doctrines that they understand as authoritative, how they worship, their liturgy, right, which
Mm-hmm.
is different, say, from ours. Do they allow women to be in leadership as pastors or bishops? That was different. So for me, part of going to Yale was about a further opening up to the diversity, really not just of people, but to the diversity of the way God is already moving
Mm-hmm.
in the world for me.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to see that around, not within a homogenous community. Everybody believes the same, grew up the same, but in what they say a heterogeneous community, a diverse community.
Yeah.
I was able to see that part of what it means first to be a Christian for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
I hold that dear to my heart. What that means to be a Christian is to actually believe that, that the gospel truly is about the good news. And the good news is truly something that is radically inclusive, right?
Mm-hmm.
That opens up to a diversity of
Yeah.
voices.
Yeah.
And not only that, this goes back to the writer who I am vocationally. When I was at Yale, I began to realize that a part of what was allowing me to transform, and this is actually, I was journaling, allowed me to transform, was through the written word, right? So being able
Mm-hmm.
to journal about what I was experiencing, being able to write about through various outlets at Yale, whether it was the journal or the magazine or whatever, or the theater that I kept doing at Yale. Like I'm like a
Mm-hmm.
theology student, I'm still doing theater,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that all of this, the arts, in particular the written word, it helped me to make that. And then finally, I will say, and this goes to Princeton now. So all of that was preparing me to be able to write my academic scholarship, to show up here at Princeton and do what I do, because all of my evolution, the transformation I went through, it began, I like to say, marking me as a student of the world that is fundamentally guided by questions rather than by neat answers. What
Mm-hmm.
we
Yes.
want to do is we want to hold in our hands or ascertain in absolute ways the answers to our questions.
Yeah.
But what I realized that part of my own, creative process through my education and then writing my books and then being sought after and then coming to Yale, it was because I was asking different and new kinds of questions that others weren't,
Yep.
right, within my field.
Yep.
This is what
Yep.
distinguishes you,
That's
right?
it. That's it. It's
That
the
you're doing
questions.
something different.
It's the
You're doing
questions.
something, and it's in the
Yeah.
questions, right? It's in
Yeah.
the questions.
Yeah.
And it's about asking, just not new questions, but I like to say better questions,
Mm-hmm.
or just questions that are authentic questions that
Mm-hmm.
that really illuminate or amplify a conversation we need to have
Mm-hmm.
that we're not having,
Mm-hmm.
right? And for me, it was especially for those who are silenced, right? So I focused on, poverty in this country, particularly among children, and around the world. I focused
Wow.
on Black women and their own unique religious experiences, and how they're reflecting on divine light.
Mm-hmm.
So it's through these sort of methodological inquiries that I was doing, that then Princeton, came along. And I should say the theology department is a very, like, it has been a very orthodox, so it's very classical,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's turning to not just philosophically, whether it's Aristotle or Plato, like Greek philosophy, but also, it's focused on your major reformers, Martin Luther, Calvin,
Mm-hmm.
Karl Barth, and so forth. And so, here they have this Black woman who's showing up and saying, I want to put Calvin and Bart in conversation with this important Black woman figure that they know nothing about,
Mm-hmm.
but yet it's generative and fruitful for breaking open, for cracking open, right?
Mm-hmm.
A question that wouldn't have even occurred to them as a question
Yeah.
had they not, were they not listening to me
Yeah.
talk about the relationship or the conversation, the generative nature of, the voices I'm bringing to bear on the broader classical conversation and figure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's like, oh, is it because you're so smart? Look, Phil, we all know this. I'm sure you know this. Like, it's never about the one that has, the raw talent. Okay.
Oh,
It's never
that's
simply
listen.
about the one that has,
Listen.
I know,
We
it never
we
is.
don't
I'm
know them
not
like
the
that.
smartest.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not the smartest. I'm not the one that was just the ultimate genius. It was just, I feel it was my sense of authenticity and trusting my creative process and voice
Talk,
to
talk,
ask questions that I needed to ask.
share with them that reverence that you have for the process. How you were telling me before, um, a few months back, how that process, how it led to the next thing. You being a part of that process and writing and the pen and all those different things, and how you were in Texas and trusting that, and that led that is what created the journey. Share that, because you just
Yep,
unlocked something
yep,
when you talked about
yep.
process.
So, and this has to do with my writing journey, what I would write that would get me in the door at Princeton. I think this is what we're discussing, correct? That would
Yes,
actually
yes, yes,
that would lead to the hire.
yes,
Um,
yes.
so right, so like I'd say, I've already talked about some of the stuff that I've written on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for me, it was at that this I'm sorry, this was back in 2012, 2013.
Mm-hmm.
I should
Mm-hmm.
know. Where after I had written my first book and I was in Texas, I was working on a second book.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I really wanted to do was I wanted to get a more diasporic understanding, that is Black diasporic
Mm-hmm.
understanding with respect to what I was writing on. And so, I did a residency, you could say a sabbatical in Paris
Mm-hmm.
for several months at the American Library in Paris. And,
Wow.
and part of that actually in this book is called Religious Resistance to Neoliberalism, Black Feminist and Womanist Perspectives.
Wow.
In the latter portion of that book, and this is what I was doing in Paris and in Berlin as well, is I was engaging artists, actually. I'm thinking here of like Savvy Contemporary, which is a major, so like exhibition, but also engages other forms of the arts like music, performance art, and things like that. But I was wanting to reflect on notions of theology with respect to aesthetics, this larger conversation of the arts. In the latter portion of this book, that's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What we refer to as theological aesthetics. But the point here is all that I was going to be writing, concerning women, concerning aesthetics, and so forth. What I didn't know is that by just being authentic and showing up and doing the work that my soul had to have, okay,
Mm.
that eventually there will be a job announcement at Princeton. Okay. Now, this is really important to note because I can publicly talk about this now. I had just, prior to applying to Princeton, I had just come through a process of application and I was a finalist at Yale. And that's where I really, really wanted to be, because I had been a student there, and that didn't come through. That didn't come through. And I remember being brokenhearted about it. Like, oh my gosh, this was sort of like a dream. I wanted to go back, blah, blah, blah. And so when the announcement came out, it was more like someone that did work in sort of African American theology, but more like a systematic. When I say a systematic theologian, a theologian that's more, I would say, like more orthodox in their theological and methodological approach. Like that's what it was. But to make a long story short, because I was doing this really, really important work, and this is what I was talking to you about back in January, when I came before the committee and I was interviewed, okay, and then I received the call back, and I was a little concerned because I was like, well, the actual description I don't fully fit. I'm applying, but I really don't fully fit this description. And of course, we all know this led to me getting the position. But what was interesting is that in the process of me moving through that and becoming the finalist and coming for the public talk here at Princeton, that one of the things that one of the committee members said is, we really didn't even know what we were looking. We realized we really didn't even know what we were looking for until we heard you. We really didn't even know we were looking for until we heard you. And to me, that was also like a really like watershed moment in my own career.
That's
like
huge.
But like huge, like, oh my goodness, because I am doing the work my soul must have. Because it's not, straight line, classical in that sense, or orthodox in terms of what folks do in this department here. That they would hear me and say, you know what? This is where we need to be in our theology department. This is the next place that theology is going in this sense. And so this was really important for me. Now, what did it teach me? So I understand in some sense it was generative in the sense that it opened up a door. And this is of course where I'm at. What it sort of taught me is to like trust my creative process. I remember writing that second book, and I remember being like, I don't know, like I do at some point. I would like to return to the East Coast. I knew that I didn't want to stay in Texas permanently. And but then also, and just in terms of my interest, and the writing of theology, I was just saying to myself, I'm not sure, but it was really trusting that process for me. And part of trusting that process was like waking up every day, showing up. And remember, we had this discussion that part of the beauty of the process is as intimate as I like to drink cappuccino or lattes with my writing sessions each day, right? And I like to have particular pens on the left side of my laptop and my pad. It was intimate details, just like showing up each day to affirm the authenticity of my own voice, the authenticity of the theological questions that I had. It was a risk that might not be heard because of some of the dominant ways that theology is done. But I trusted that process, because in the end, as Phil, you and I, we talked about a lot, the work is its own reward. Part of the love of what we do, of the creative process for me of writing, is that writing is its own reward because of what I encounter, what I discover in the process of writing. And so for me, it's like in that discovery, not only did I write myself into the voice I have today, I mean, really, into an area of expertise that I have today, that now I'm theorizing I'm offering imagistic and sonic understandings of theology.
Wow.
This has to do with music. This has to do with the broader art. This has to do with writing.
And that wasn't a thing before.
Yeah, put it like this: it was peripheral. It was seen as what they do over there. Definitely
you made it front and center.
Not the center. No, and definitely it wouldn't land you a position per se at Princeton.
No. You'd be at some little school that might be around for 5 years. And
literally. So for me, it was like just again trusting that process, and more specifically, I mean, to your point about what we discussed in January, it was about surrendering to the power and the joy of what I am constantly awakening myself to in the daily quotidian practice
Yeah.
of writing. It's a spirituality. It is a form of prayer for me, Phil. It really is. It's how I touch God and the world through writing. And writing is just not me putting pen to paper, by the way.
Yeah.
It's me taking a break, walking. I do lots of walks. I'm an avid walker, and I'm walking outside. And as I'm walking outside, I'm noticing something about the world, and I begin that's part of my writing process. I'm forming something about
Yes.
the concepts that I'm thinking about.
Yes.
I hear something. I hear someone playing something. This was that. This happened to me in January. This happened to me in January. I'm in the jam session
Yeah.
that you and my husband and
Yeah.
others are a part of. And as I'm reflecting and journaling on the flight back, I'm realizing really what I'm after is a sonic understanding, a sonic theorization of theology, of the way we experience God and the world.
Wow.
That this is really what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Images and sound.
Wow.
So for me, it was all of this that allowed the door to swing open for me at Princeton at this historic moment, mind you, where more ethnic minoritized people are coming,
Mm-hmm.
where, and this is really shocking, but it's true, where divinity schools, Bible institutes, seminaries, where a record number of Pentecostal, neo-Pentecostal, and charismatic people are coming.
That's crazy. Now that's
And
a
these are, and many of these people are creatives. I can't tell you the number of people that have come to Princeton. Their background is as a musician, in
wow.
particular, a
That's a
musician.
stat no one's talking about. That's nuts.
Yeah,
I I think what you're saying is so amazingly important. It's so crazy. There'll be some people, and I'm not being critical. I'm this is not a passive slight. I would never disrespect you at all. But I
no,
just understand. I don't know who the audience is gonna always be. Some people are like,
right,
man, she got some big words. Like, no, that's fine. My dad was a college professor. I grew
right,
up with it. It makes all sense to me to have this conversation. I don't know. There may be some people who are like, but listen first. If you listen, it'll get context. Your vocabulary can grow. Not talking down to you. I'm just saying that's how
that's
you. That's
right.
that's really the easiest way to. You think people with a vocabulary go to the dictionary? That's not what they do.
No,
They contextualize. That's how you learn
yeah,
it. Yeah, it's context. So that
that's
part.
right.
Number two is if you listen and you hear what she's saying, the narrative is that show up in that thing that you have,
That's it.
regardless of
Good.
how small or insignificant you may believe it is,
That's it.
regardless of how niche you think it is,
Yeah.
regardless of how I'm the only one. If you want a tip, I don't know how much of an expert I could be to give it, but the one thing I do know how to do is to spark creativity in myself. I may not know
Yes.
a lot of other things. I know how to do that. I'm gonna tell you,
Yes.
one of the best things you can do is take a break from social media. Not because it's popular, or you need to just get away. No, a lot of times that comparison, beyond it being the thief of joy, it will be
Mhm.
the thief of creativity,
Mhm.
because which is joy. So, back to it.
Right.
You're a lot of times you will start thinking with that capitalist mindset. You'll start thinking in the terms of, oh, how can I hack the algorithm? Yo,
Mm.
those things can come after, but
Yes.
you need to have something that is purely your own.
That's it.
Taking a sabbatical, and not just once, but enough times where you get alone, get away, get to your
Yeah.
own. What are your thoughts? What
Yes.
is coming to you?
Yes.
What's divinely being inspired in you? What is something that you like? And sometimes it's not about like, oh, I got a solution to the world. Sometimes it's just a itch you have to scratch, and you don't know
Yes.
anything more than that. And you're like,
That's it.
yo, it may feel like a guilty pleasure at first. You're like,
Yep.
I just got, and when you start feeling the joy that fulfills, and the fulfillment that you get from this thing, you'll start to understand, wait a minute, this might be bigger than me. And the more that you do it and the more that it kind of spreads out, that's a clue that it's not just about you. You
That's
know,
right.
so sometimes
That's
you have to get away from what everybody else is doing, because I guarantee you the zeitgeist is not going to tell you what's next. It's telling
right.
you what's now. And if you're starting in what's now, you're late. The
Yeah.
people who are
Yeah.
doing what's now were already, they were, you late to the party. You need to go ahead. Hey, that I missed that bus. Let me get on the next thing. And you don't look at, well, just no, it's in you. The next,
Uh,
they told her, we didn't know what we was looking for 2 weeks. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
walked in the room, I'm just
Yeah.
being me. Oh, we didn't know we was looking for you until we met you.
Right.
You are literally a walking solution for people who don't even know they need it.
That's right.
And the
That's
greatest entrepreneurs give the world a thing they didn't know they needed until they got it.
mm,
That's all the greatest entrepreneurs. We didn't know we needed a car until we had the T model.
come on.
Okay? We didn't know that we needed electric light.
Wow.
Okay,
Wow.
until we didn't realize we were doing fine with gas. We were just
Right.
we didn't realize that we needed an iPhone.
Mm,
Understand this. iPhone didn't just
true.
revolutionize Apple, it revolutionized the phone industry.
That's right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Who wants a computer in their hand? That's stupid. Until you got one.
Till you got one.
Do you remember when we were like, I remember when my dad got his first, because he was a journalism professor. He
Mhm.
got a MacBook. He got the first MacBook Pro. I still have it. He got it in 2000, the very first MacBook Pro. This thing had 10 gigs on it. We said, we'll never be able to fill up 10 gigs.
Oh my gosh.
I remember when the Panasonic, because I was a film minor in college. I remember when the Panasonic 24p camera came out. We were like, there'll never be anything creamier or better than this. Look at it. It looks like real film. You can get one of those things for like $65 now.
Right.
The thing
You
was like
sure
a
did.
$5,000 camera at the time. They were shooting real movies. Spike Lee has several movies shot with the Panasonic 24p.
Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
yes,
Wow.
and now you can
Wow.
get that camera. You know, your iPhone is shooting better than that. It's something you didn't know that you need until you had it. You carry something you don't
Mm,
know the world needs until they see you, but you got to develop it. No one else can develop it in you. You got to develop it. It's
that's it.
you. It's
That's
you.
it.
It's gonna be your time. It's gonna be that dark room. It's gonna be with nobody else around. It's gonna be when nobody else
Yeah.
can find the answers. It's gonna be you facing your fears. You telling
Yep.
yourself you suck.
Yep.
That everyone's better than you. All that thing. That
Yep.
self doubt that you're gonna have to either. Some of us don't even overcome it. We just learn to live with it. Whatever it
Right.
is, you're
Whatever it
gonna
is.
bring that to market. All your insecurities, your fears, all the things you're good at, your expertises, that
Mm,
blend of all, and there's going to be, and no one else can steal it because someone else can copy you, but because they didn't have your package,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not going to come out as authentic. It's got to be you.
You. Mm,
Somebody else could have walked in with your idea and it wasn't the right solution. It was you with the idea. All of
yeah.
that. So anybody else stealing your idea,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
go for it. It's
That's
you. It's only you.
good.
And so when you walk into that place and it happens because you show up every
That's
day. Sometimes there have been
mm,
days that I just was waking up
yeah. Yeah.
just because it was like, you know what? I don't even know. I don't even know. But I plan to go to bed knowing something I didn't know, when I got up this morning. I plan to
Yep.
go to bed with 1 inch closer towards an opportunity than I had when I
Mm,
woke up this morning. And sometimes that's the best show up you got. Yep, be
mm.
depressed. Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Sit in your robe
Right.
all day. Binge your show, but keep that light on.
That's
Keep
it.
the light on.
That's it. That's it,
Binge Game
Phil.
of Thrones for the 5th time. Fine. Keep the light on.
Keep the
You're
light
gonna see
on.
something you didn't see before. Like, oh,
Oh,
that's
good.
your process. That's
That's
all
it.
part
That's
of your.
it.
It's that stuff. That's
It.
still showing up. Don't shame yourself and guilt yourself into thinking I'm
Yes.
not. No, you got up today. You should
That's it.
go do it. Okay,
That's
you
it.
may not be able to give it 5 hours. Okay,
Yep.
we have times, I have these manic phases where I'm like, oh my God, all I can do is write. I'll write 10
Yep.
songs in like 6
Yep.
days or
Yep.
more. That happens. And then I can't write a song for 2 months. Not because I can't sit down and write, but I'm in another phase.
That's it.
But it's
That's
all
it.
showing up.
Come on.
It's all showing up.
And let me be absolutely real right now. I'm in a phase where literally I've said to myself, I have to turn off for a few. When I say turn off doesn't mean I'm walking away from everything. This is
Yeah.
to your point. I'm, hands up in the air. I'm no longer dealing with my creative process. When I say right now, I'm recalibrating because from January up until now, for example, over the last 3 or 4 months, I have been to Europe 3 times delivering major lectureships.
Wow.
I've been teaching. I'm over PhD
You've been
students.
giving out.
I've been giving out, and
Yeah.
most importantly, I've been writing.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Gotcha.
so I've been writing in particular. And so for me, this was about 2 or 3 days ago at the beginning. I was sitting down at my laptop and of course showing up the way I normally do. And these moments, and I'll say this, as you begin to show up in the way that Phil is talking about 2 things. When you feel the need to recalibrate, I like to use that language a bit better. Recalibrate. You can say take a break, but recalibrate.
That's really what it is. That's really what it means.
That's all you're really doing.
Yeah.
When you're making that decision, you will 2 things. You will trust that feeling when it occurs because you've been giving yourself to the process. So you've experienced this before.
Yeah.
Wow, I've done so much. I need to step back a little bit, right? And first rest. Rest is a form of inspiration.
Yes,
Oh. Some of my best ideas come when I'm doing nothing, when I'm not even thinking about my work. Rest it rejuvenates the body, it rejuvenates the mind, it rejuvenates your vision of what you're doing. And so that's the first thing, you trust yourself. But then secondly, when I pause, what I also realize is that in some ways, it's going to enable me. It really is going to enable me to refocus in a way that is generative, right? Because when I sat down 3 days ago, I realized I really couldn't be in any way generative because I needed to take a break and recalibrate. And right, there you go. And this is literally the season I'm in right now. Like right now, as of 3 days ago, I said, you know what? I am going to do, and I know that some of the things that inspire me, but I want to do some different things. I'm going to go and do this down the street.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and do this. I think I'm going to sit up in the bed on tomorrow, like literally, I'm being honest, up in the bed, and I'm going to watch some shows that I really love, right? I'm going to do all this. But for me, what I realize, I say recalibration because all of it is still a part of the process.
Yeah.
That's the point you're making, right? And that is such an important point. All of it is still an important part of the process. And if we can learn how to embrace the all of what the process is, not rush the process, not commodify the process, but let it flow and learn how to be healthy. I'm talking about us. Attend to self-care. Be healthy, because how many artists do we know that we know the stories, that it ends bad, basically. Because they don't attend to self-care, the health of the self. That this is all really important. So I mean, just to your point, I'm literally in this stage right now, but I trust the process.
Because you're gonna swing back.
Right.
I think one of the things that helps that is to realize you are more than your art. The sum of you is more than just your art. That is not the only thing that defines you.
That's
yes,
good.
As creative as we are as individuals, there's more to us that define us. And there are other areas that we can love and get joy from and get, sometimes for me, like cooking, I get ideas about making music from cooking. I'll cook and I'll be like, okay, I'll get an idea about something. Like a lot of times if I go to cook a certain meal, it'll just come to me, make this. And I'm just like, I'm like, okay, and I won't go look at a recipe. No, just, put this in, put that. And it's the same way. Okay, take that, frame that. Next time you get an idea about a song, do it the same way. Just go
Mm,
make it. Sit
mm,
down and make it. You got all the
mm,
ingredients. Go
mm.
make it and
Go make it.
see how it happens. And sometimes it is following a recipe. Sometimes it's okay, what are they doing in
Yeah.
the video? But all there's so many different things. Like I said, you keep your mind on. Let that window stay open,
Yes.
that so that you can always get the ideas, you can always get the inspiration,
Yeah.
you can always get the sunlight. It's always coming in. But there are times when you need to shut down, you pushing it back out. I think that's a
That's
lot of what we're saying for people. and
yeah.
um
Yeah.
and it'll
Exactly.
it'll it'll keep a healthy process going.
That's
Your
it.
your little
That's
your
it.
personal ecosystem will stay
Yes.
will stay moving, and it'll stay
That's
healthy.
it.
um I know you got to get going. This has
Ooh,
been
good.
so
Yeah.
good.
I know it has.
Yeah, yeah, Keri, we got to have you on again. I knew, like I
We
said, I knew
do.
this is gonna have to. There's some, but I'm
Uh,
thinking,
uh,
there's some panel ideas I got that we can
oh,
just
this will
kind
be
of dig
good.
in, dig in
This
on
will
some
be good.
panels.
And
Yeah,
then I would be curious, this is just a side note,
yeah,
not associated with what we're doing right now, but there's often this sort of trope that so many artists embrace about sort of the suffering artist, like
yeah,
the artist that somehow suffering enables us to do art.
yeah,
It,
yeah,
it
yeah. The
that
melancholy and
it
all that.
becomes
Yeah,
the yeah. Even like I know as a writer, even like tropes like about like suicidal, right? Like
sure,
suffering
sure. Yeah,
or
yeah.
like,
They make the
suicide.
best
And
writers and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah. And so
depression and all that.
exactly, but I wonder in art as well. So to me, I don't know. To me, and I'm not saying we have to do it. I'm saying I would just be so like, if that ever comes up in anyone you're talking to, I am all ears because
Yeah,
it is such a common trope.
yeah.
But I think it can be a very dangerous one.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. Self-induced suffering is not ever
right,
the way.
exactly.
I think we have to take one thing, because I've been not suicidal, but I've been depressed, and
Yeah,
I've been in the valley in my life before. You don't
yeah.
need to ever induce those.
Induce them.
Yeah,
That's my point.
you don't
Exactly.
need to induce them, because what you're doing is you're denying and you're pushing away the season that has been presented to you. So you're
Mm,
actually not going to be your best. The
that's right.
season that's presented to you is the one you're supposed to have.
It's good.
Don't play
Mm.
God. Okay?
Woo!
Believe in him
Come
or
on.
not, but don't
Come
play
on.
God. Once you
Come on.
start trying to manufacture your seasons to
Good.
create a thing, if you're in a happy place, then write about that. If writing isn't what you do when you're happy, then that means you should be expressing.
That's right. That's
Okay?
right. It's good.
Hendrix, when he wasn't on tour, he used to go out and tour with like Little Richard and play with other people because he wanted to play.
Wow.
Until he got that out of him, then I don't need to write again. Okay, cool.
That's powerful.
Find your rhythm, find your thing, and accept the process that you're in, accept the phase of the season that
Mm,
you're in, and
mm.
find your best productivity in that space. Because they're
That's good.
not all the same. Accept that they're
Good.
not all the same. That comes from that
That's good.
commodifying art again. Oh, well,
Yep.
if all I'm doing is pushing out a product for y'all to consume, something's
Yes.
wrong.
Yes.
There's a
Something's
whole there's something in that's where the sickness and the danger comes in, and we're killing ourselves. That's why we're never going to be AI. That's why AI is never going to
come
be able
on.
to be us.
Come
And I'm
on.
going to have I already have an episode that's
Shh.
dealing with some forms of AI, and I want to talk about that again. AI can be
Oh,
helpful
good.
in some things, but yeah, there's a sinister side to it, and I think the thing that's going to keep AI from being what it actually wants to harvest out of humanity, and I did
Mhm.
mean what I said,
Yep.
um, is the artist. The
Mm.
artist is what's actually standing in the way of AI being what it can be. Because no matter how many algorithms, no matter how many libraries of reference they can and samples they can get from us, the
Mhm.
difference with AI is this: AI can only recreate what we have expressed. We can
Ooh,
create what AI can't see.
that's good, Phil.
Because as Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun. AI is
Yeah.
under the sun.
Yeah. It's right.
Because we have an actual connection to that which is above the sun, we can
Yeah.
hear and see and know things that AI cannot. We
Come on.
are what stands between AI and us. So
That's
realize
good.
that the attack will
Good.
come against the artist. That's what's
Mm.
going to, and it's not going to come in, we hate the artist. No, they're going to come in, this is more commodifiable. Well, there's no
Mm.
money in that. That's what they're going to do. I'm telling you.
Oh,
The money's
wow.
going to be in, well, the money is in this generative product. Why don't you use this instead? Well, you don't have to think. You can just ask Chat GPT. But Chat
Wow.
GPT cannot
True.
create from
True.
above
Right.
they cannot
Exactly.
create from more than it cannot create from over above the sun. It can't.
That's it.
It can only
That's it.
tell you what's
Cannot do it.
already been.
That's right.
Our souls, it is not a soul. It may even be sentient in ways that
Mm.
we don't know, but that
Yep. Yep.
sentience does not have access
That's it.
to the
That's it.
ultimate divine.
That's it.
It's been
That's it.
disconnected from that. That
That's
is why
good.
it's not good.
That's good.
That's some weird theology. I'm just telling us
No, that
that
ain't
is.
weird. You on point there. Let me
I'm
tell you
telling
something,
us
sir.
it
You
is
on point
coming
there.
for us, and artists, we are the last stand. We are
Wow.
literally the Levitical stand, if you want to go from Bible space,
Yeah.
against
Oh my gosh.
against the Nephilim force. I'm gonna stop there.
Come on,
Just
okay, look, let me
saying.
go relieve my nanny. But oh, this was so good, Phil.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
That would be a
And
whole nother thing.
yeah, and last thing, I'm
Please
not
give me the
sure.
last thing. Button me.
The last thing, I'm not sure, but I think in August, because I have family all in Nashville, my aunts and all
Yes.
them, is that I'm going to be pulling into town for 2 or 3 days. So
We got to do a
you
live
know
one.
I'm gonna let you and Gina know so I can stop
Yeah,
by.
we got.
Praise God.
Listen, fish fry in the backyard. We doing it.
Come on.
That's a
Okay,
done deal.
good, good. Okay,
Listen,
okay.
that's definitely a done deal.
But I'll let you guys know way ahead of time, like in July, like way ahead
Listen,
of time.
whatever. As long as I'm not out of town, we can do it.
Okay, good.
I don't
Okay,
care how we will bend over. We'll bend over backwards to make sure that happens. We already
okay,
got
good.
that. It's done. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I said
bro.
bend over before, no diddy on that, but we still got it. So.
You are so stupid. You're dumb.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, Phil, okay, I got to
Thank
go.
you.
Okay.
All right.
But I love you, bro, and give Jenny my love, please.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. This has been the
Okay.
Gtar Phil Show, the GPS for Creatives. Thank you, Dr. Keri Day, and we will see y'all next time. Peace out. Woo! Thank y'all.